I like being honest, and I'm like, hey, for me, it's not about earning the friendship. No. I'm going to trust you off the bat.
Right.
And that might be really naive, but I want to give you all the trust until you prove me wrong, because I like to think the best in people.
Access more.
Life is like a roller coaster, but it's better when we go through it together. Welcome to the Candace Bure podcast. We talk about life's challenges, celebrations, and everything in between. And my guest host this season is Jennie Allen, and her current book is titled Untangle Your Emotions. Jennie, we have been having truly the best conversations this week, all about emotions. I've learned so much. I've thought about so much. I'm glad that we're talking about this because I feel like based on our conversations, I can be a better emotionally available wife, parent, and friend.
Yeah. Yeah, I am always surprised at how this impacts every part of my life.
Yeah.
And the healthier I get, the more people notice. And I think the better we are, we're going to talk about friendship today, the better we are at being there for people and cultivating good friendships, which everybody needs right now and everybody's craving, but it feels hard to find.
It does. So tell me about your friend group.
Yeah.
Because I talked a lot about having my best friend, who's still my best friend today since we were 15 years old.
Yeah.
What do your friendships look like?
Well, I've been blessed all my life to have really great different groups of friends. And, you know, we just both married our kids and my kid, our wedding, I was shocked. We put my friends from this stage of life and together at a table and this stage of life. I should have mixed them all up, but it was, it was fun to go through the tables and walk through and see all my friends from this part of my life and this part. So I really am blessed, but certainly right now, the two friends I have, this is the most committed relationships as far as friendship I've ever experienced. And I think it's because one of them's just a really fierce, good friend. And she has fought for us. And she has, I say sometimes she is intrusive, which she hates, but it really is true. And I think you have to be a little bit to forge good friendships in this culture because when you look at, which I studied when I did Find Your People, when I looked at other cultures and certainly throughout history, you see that most of the world has always existed in a village. And even currently, 80% of the world lives in that type of environment. So when you think of a village, it typically caps out about 150 people. You rarely leave the place you were born more than 20 miles ever in your life. You usually are generationally raising your kids together. You are working together. When I go take my son back to his home country of Rwanda, you see many of the huts don't have doors, and we see that and we think poverty, but the reality is they are not sad. Like this is the way they love their life, and you see that they're not sad. They're carrying water together and they're laughing and having a ball. And you look at that and you're like, gosh, the isolation that money and Amazon and all these things have caused in our Western life it's caused us to be the most isolated generation that's ever lived. And it's pretty undisputed. Yep. And so that's pretty sad, Yeah. And when you think of what we've talked about earlier in the season, that the greatest way to heal your brain from trauma, the greatest way for your emotions to thrive and to be healthy and whole are to go through things together, that you're not alone in your emotions, that you're actually connected to other people through your emotions and because of your emotions. So now we've got emotional health skyrocketing, or emotional, unhealth skyrocketing. And then we've got the greatest isolation crisis ever. When I was young, I would borrow an egg from my neighbor all the time. I don't know why that's what my mom never had, but she always ran out of eggs. And so I would go borrow an egg and they would borrow one back. And I remember when we moved and I was working on Find Your People, this book, I felt so convicted. I was like, I'm going to start borrowing things from our neighbors. And finally, Zach was like, you have to stop because they never ask back. Like this isn't a culture where you do that. They don't need anything in return. And so I was like, dang it, that's true. And so, although I have great neighbors and I don't think they ever minded, but there is a sense of we don't need each other anymore.
Yeah.
And most cultures that's not even pragmatic. You do need each other for agriculture. You do need each other for water. You do need each other for living. And so I think that is a grief. And I think it's an important way to start the conversation, that we realize we're really up against a really pretty big hurdle of isolationism.
Yeah, when I also think about community and living, especially in Los Angeles, neighbors don't talk to each other.
Yeah.
They just don't. And you might be in LA and you might have a great neighborhood. Okay, they do exist. But for the most part, I lived for the last 8 years and I knew my neighbors. We'd wave hi to each other, but that was about it. I think when we moved in, I brought a gift and said hi to kind of welcome myself to the neighborhood because nobody was bringing over muffins and welcoming me. Yeah. But it just kind of ended there. And it's just kind of street waves if you're getting in your car, but no one knows anyone. And yet we have another place that we live also, and it's a much smaller community.
Yes.
And it is a totally different way of life. And I am born, bred, and raised in Los Angeles. I'm an LA girl. So then going to a smaller community where you walk into the grocery store and they're like, hi, Candace. Hi, Mrs. Bure.
Right.
It's like
that's how it's
the
supposed
coolest
to be.
thing. And I know some of you are thinking like, oh, that's because you're on TV. People know your name. I'm like, no,
they know everybody's name. I know.
They know everybody's name. And to walk down the street, and even though you're picking up groceries or picking up dry cleaning, you're going to run into 3 or 4 people and you're going to wave. And you might not be like super close friends with them, but that's something growing up I never experienced living in Los Angeles. And it's like heavenly for me. Like,
it's
my gosh, community.
All of us. I mean, think of the old show Cheers. Like the song was, we all want to go in a place where everybody knows our name. Like that was the song, and we all sang that song. And it's true. That's what we loved about Friends. That's what we loved about Full House and Fuller House. It's like you had a full house and there was community and life and people. And we all enjoy watching that because there's something about that connects with a part of us that knows we're alone, that knows we feel isolated, but doesn't know how to solve it. And so I just think if we're starting this conversation and they feel like, gosh, I'm isolated, you just aren't alone in being lonely. 3 in 5, this is prior to COVID when I did this research, 3 in 5 people said that they feel lonely, admitted that they feel lonely. So I imagine now that number has to be 4 in 5. So most people feel lonely and isolated.
And you're right. Apps and online accessibility, like Amazon, like Postmates, like delivery to your doorstep, aren't helping with the isolation.
No. One of the things I say in Find Your People is, go borrow a ladder, don't buy one. Like just things that you don't really need. Like just find reasons to need each other, because people actually love to feel needed. We hate to be the ones in need, but people actually love to feel needed. And so find ways to need people. And what we are dealing with emotional health right now is the thing we need. So this is why this matters so much is emotionally you need people. So even if physically you can take care of yourself and you don't need to come together to farm, although I highly recommend that if you communal gardens are really big thing.
This is my dream,
Austin,
by the way. I've already asked Lev and Elliot. I'm like, can we just get a big piece of property? I don't care if it's in the middle of nowhere. Can we all live together, please?
Oh, me too.
Within the same,
that is our dream
few
too.
mile radius. Yes. That is my dream with my children.
I know, me too. And so if you might need to do that, but the reality is, my friends, you started with a question about my friends. My 2 dearest friends, what it looks like for us to need each other is Zach, my husband, laughs. All of our husbands laugh, I'm sure. But 2 to 3 times a week, it'll be a phone call that says, what are y'all doing right now? I need to talk. And one of us will need the other 2, or 3, either our group is growing. And we will just stop what we're doing and we'll grab lunch. We'll stop what we're doing and we'll grab dinner. We'll stop what we're doing and we'll go on a walk. We'll stop what we're doing. And it's crazy because some people listening are going, I have young kids. I don't know how to do that. Then we go over to that person's house. Like if you have your kids, then we come to you. And so you just make it work. But back to my intrusive friend, like she just showed up and she wasn't afraid to bring her kids over and stay and just knock on my door. And that was so shocking to me when I first moved in. but I loved it. And I realized that's how we became close, was she wasn't afraid to be intrusive. I remember one of my friends just showing up with pizza one night when she knew Zach was out of town and I was worn out with kids. And she didn't tell me she was coming. She just showed up at 6:00, paper plates in hand and 2 pizzas. And my house isn't clean, right?
Love that.
And that's okay. And I think we've built friendship into happy hour rather than war buddies. And we're war. Like life is freaking hard. And when we sit down together, the 3 of us, or 4 of us, whoever's there, we know we're going to get down and dirty. Like it's going to be the real stuff of what's going on. And it's not just going to be the circumstances, though we often begin with the circumstances. It moves very quickly to how do you feel about the circumstances and the things that has unearthed, and the closeness and intimacy that has brought with us has been so powerful. I mean, just recently I was with a friend and we were talking about her circumstances and she said, I kind of feel like I'm drowning. And I said, well, why don't you describe what you mean by that? And then she went on to say, some days I don't want to live. Just that one question. Typically, I and many other people would have been hearing about our circumstances and assumed that drowning meant busy, stressed, right?
That's immediately what I thought.
But because I asked, because of the work I've done with Untangle Your Emotions, I just asked that one more question. What do you mean by that? What do you feel exactly? And all of a sudden I'm like, oh gosh, this certain friend needs help. Like, and we rallied and like other, this was in a different group of friends, but we rallied and got around her and she hadn't said it out loud yet. So we're at war. Like everybody's at war. I don't know anybody that's got a cush life that even if your circumstances look cush, that you're really just, nothing's wrong. Almost everybody I know has a kid that is struggling really badly, if not more than one. Almost everybody I know that is single is dealing with possibly a really difficult relationship with their parent. Everybody I know I can think of, I could go through the 100 people in my village. I call it that, even though we live in a big city, Dallas too. I think about them and I could go through and tell you like something so painful that they are going through. Yeah. So we're at war. And if we can't emotionally learn to be there for each other, and I'll go back to a story I told earlier in the season about Navy SEAL, my friend that's a Navy SEAL. And he said, we go and we fight and we do this hard job and we put away our emotions. And then we would come back and cry in the barracks. And he said, but I don't have anybody to cry in the barracks with anymore. Like I don't do that. And I was like, well, and he goes, I'll never have that again. And I stopped him and I said, don't ever say that again. Like you fight for that. You build that. You create that. Because we all need to come back and cry in the barracks. Because it's hard. Yeah. And I'm asking, how do we create it? Because I want to know about your friend group. You live around each other. Yes. Do you do church together? Yeah. So one of the things when we moved to Dallas, we lived in Austin for years. We raised our kids there for 12 years. And when we were moving to be closer to family and to find a better fit for our kids' school. We loved Austin. We didn't want to leave. But I had started to feel lonely there. And I think one reason was because it was just so spread out and all my friends, it was 45 minutes to meet someone for dinner. It wasn't convenient. So when we moved to Dallas, I really prayed. I was like, Lord, would you give me 5 friends in 5 miles? Would you give me 5 friends in 5 miles? And sure enough, pray it, y'all. If you're wishing for a friend and you're like, I can't find anybody, like pray and pray specifically. And he answered that prayer and he gave me those friends. And that proximity was important. And I think it matters. I don't think it's everything because you can overcome it, but proximity does matter. And so we do live close to each other so we can run to lunch. It's not, we don't have to plan it a week in advance. Right. We can stop what we're doing and be there in 5 minutes because we live that close together. So proximity is one part. I really believe vulnerability, availability. These are things you've got to create in your life. None of us have a deep desire to be vulnerable with people, but you try it. You start by, I always say it's just like dating. You take somebody to coffee, you go to coffee and you share just a little, and you decide, is that safe? Are they going to protect me? I was just going to ask, have you been burned? Oh, for sure. Yeah. Oh gosh, badly burned. I remember when I was a pastor's wife, that was the worst because I would be vulnerable with somebody that I thought loved me. But then when something with the church came up, they would share it readily with people and use it against me. Things that I had shared in confidence, looking for help and looking for comfort. So I've been burned. And And that will, but what you get, I always say, let's say that the first 5 people hurt you. The first 5 people are not safe. But the 6th one is your best friend for life, and you can't imagine life without him. Would you go through the first 5? Would you keep trying? And people would say yes.
Yes, of course.
So you just got to believe that you will find it. And you've got to be a good friend. Friendship is just like emotions. It's an art and it's a skill, and you've got to get better at it. And we can get better at it. We've got to become good listeners. We've got to become safe people. We've got to become people that show up.
Yeah.
People that stop what they're doing to answer the phone. These are things we took for granted, 20 years ago. But now it's like, there's memes all over. Like, don't ask me to go out after 6 p.m. Don't call me. I won't answer. Like, text me, but it's like, are you happy with the world where you don't get out of your robe? Are you happy with the world where you don't answer your phone and you don't have a real conversation all day? So it really is foreign. It was funny to write the Find Your People book because I was like, man, we're really up against an impossible situation. Like, culturally, this is not the way we're wired to live. And yet, so we have to choose it. And the emotional thing felt like the screaming light. It was the thing that was, this is the need we all have.
Yeah.
We all feel this. We all feel frustrated. We all feel sad. We all feel overwhelmed. And the answer to that is to share it. So if you see your emotional life and go, gosh, I'm going to find some people to share my life with, to really share and open up with, you'll find it. And it's scary. But what about you? I'm sure you have the good and the bad stories.
I certainly do. And unlike your friendships, I don't have a lot of in-person friendships.
It's a lot of people.
Because of distance.
Yeah.
And so I've prayed for those for a long time. I really wish that I had in-person community, but I'm not without community. I have a great community. I have great circles of friends, but honestly, they are it's phone calls, it's Zoom calls, it's different apps like Voxer and Marco Polo,
those
whatever
are the best.
they are.
Yes.
Yeah.
At least you're seeing each other's faces. Yeah, that's awesome.
Exactly.
Marco Polo.
I really wish I had more in-person community.
Yeah.
However, I've made it work in using technology to have my friendships and invest in them just in different ways. But like, I listened to that and I'm like, that'd be great. I wish I had that.
I know. And you know what? That's so many people listening, right? That's so many people. I mean, I have friends, one sweet friend that just lives in the middle of nowhere. I mean, there's just nobody near her.
Yeah.
So she has to work really hard at it too. But that just means you have to work a little bit harder, right? It's not necessary to have proximity. You just have to think of that friend and remember to call them and keep up, which there have been seasons in my life that's been the same for me as well. So it's just intentionality and choosing it. But I do think, I mean, it's kind of like us, like we've been having so much fun together. And I mean, we've only been together, this is our 3rd time to hang out. But every time we've kind of gone deep and like talked about our lives, and it is bonding. Like, I genuinely, for the rest of our lives, will feel close to you not because we've spent so many hours, but we have shared really real things with each other and what's going on. And I think that's important to believe, because you do think it's going to take forever to get to that point, but you don't have to wait. Like, you could just jump in and risk it. Now, you might get burned. I would just say it's probably worth getting burned in case it's really helpful and works.
Yeah.
But it is vulnerable. It's always vulnerable.
It's always vulnerable. And I like what you said. You just give a little bit of information.
Start slow.
That is deep. You can start slow. That's a good way to ease into it, because I've been there. I've jumped all in.
Yeah.
I like being honest. And I'm like, hey, for me, it's not about earning the friendship. No. I'm going to trust you off the bat.
Right.
And that might be really naive, but I want to give you all the trust until you prove me wrong, because I like to think the best in people.
Me too. Yeah.
But with that being said, same situation. I've had people disappoint me and breaking my confidence and talking about things, or just making decisions that I thought were surprising to me within our friendship. Yeah. That maybe they actually didn't see as a bad thing or wrong, but it was like, oh, okay. Just not how I would have handled it or done that. And then it just shows me a different side of that person. And then I can err with caution as to what I do want to share or not.
Right. And I would say we're always trying to judge, like, how healthy is this person? Is this a safe person? And that's just part of doing this over time. My daughter was telling me a story about college, and specifically somebody that had just hurt her so badly. And of course it was a boy. And she, she needed certain things from friends, but it was hard. It was so awkward and hard to ask for it. And I think that is a lot of us. Like we're hurting each other even on accident. Like I don't think her friends were meaning to hurt her, but there was just this breakdown of, I need this from you and I don't want to have to ask for it, but can you just provide it? So I think sometimes it just gets awkward. Like we don't want to hurt each other, but we do. And then what we typically do is we kind of quit each other, right? Yeah. We kind of spread out. And what I'm trying to say is, if friendship is this hard, like both of us are saying it's this hard and it's taken kind of work for both of us to get to this point where we have really good friends, then we can't just blaze through friendship. Like you can't just give up on a friendship, just like you talked about earlier this season. We've got to commit to some degree to work it out. Yeah.
The area I wish that I had more friendship and community in is couples friendship. And you sound like you guys do that really well.
Yeah.
And Val and I have a few, maybe 2 couples that we enjoy and we spend time together. But a lot of times, here's the reality. I really like her and he doesn't like him, or he likes him and I don't like her.
Everybody listening right now relates to that, because if you're married, because there's that's just, it is so much harder when you're married to find.
Because when you are talking, especially when it's the 4 of you or even 6 of you, it naturally goes into the women start talking and the men start talking, which actually drives me crazy. I'm always, especially when there's 6 people at a table or more.
Let's all talk. Yeah.
I'm like, it's not girls at one end and guys at the other. We are mixing and matching because I want to be a part of the conversation too. I enjoy what my husband's talking about. Even if you guys are talking about cigars and golf, I'd like to be a part of the conversation, and the same thing on the opposite end. So it drives me nuts. There's a time for friendship for me when it's the women. If I'm going out with my girlfriends, I want to talk about all those things. But when I'm having a couples time, I don't like it to turn into his and her time. I want it to actually be a couple's time.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know why that is always the way it is, but it is true. Like so many times we'll go out with a bunch of friends and the girls sit on one end and the boys sit on the other, but it's true. Like I am blessed to really love a lot of my friends' husbands. And so I enjoy seeing them as much as seeing the girls, really. And so, that I will say this is probably the first time we've ever had couple friends like this, that we're just so in each other's lives.
Okay.
And I would say
that's encouraging to hear.
And I would say this too. It's been a little bit of a choice. I would say they're like, we all drive each other crazy sometimes too. You know what I mean? It's not like it's just perfect and easy and great. It's kind of a choice we've made to do life like this, to help each other raise each other's kids and be really intentional. And sometimes it's just easy and great and fun. Sometimes we're kind of bugging each other and a little frustrated with each other. So it is kind of like family where you still have to work things out, but we've really made a commitment to each other and we're not going anywhere.
So let's talk about that conflict when we're driving each other crazy in friendship. What do we do in the conflict?
So I would say the first thing is assume the best and let what you can go, because you don't want to be someone that's feelings are always hurt. So if you can just assume, like, you know what, they forgot me, but they usually do remember me. And I bet it was just a crazy thing and they were all together and they decided to do this thing together. It's okay. I remember early when we were all getting close at the group that I'm in now, sometimes like the other 2, so specifically for years now, the three of us have been really, really close. And I remember sometimes they would go somewhere without me and I would be like, hey, what? Like, are they closer than I am? And they didn't invite me. And then sometimes it would be a different 2, and so and finally we all kind of just had to talk about it. And it was so fun to talk about it because we'd all felt that way,
Yep.
And then we all decided together, let's just know that we are committed to each other. We love each other, but we're not going to be petty. Like we're not going to, if y'all do something together, great. And if something else works out, sometimes I can travel, but only with one person, and so this is the kind of just conversations we just talk about it. But largely we just choose, we're not going to get angry about that. We're not going to be bratty, and petty really is a better word for it. So there's that. And so assume the best and let what you can go. But when something is really gnawing at you and you've been hurt and you realize, gosh, this isn't going away, the best thing to do is to sit down with that person and say, listen, I love you. And the reason I'm sitting down with you is because I love you and value our friendship. And I've been hurt and I've probably done things to hurt you too. But I just wanted to bring it up because I'm having a hard time forgetting it. And I want us to work it out and I want us to be okay. And I don't want to hold on to this and I don't want it to come between us. Now, the immediate thing that many of you are thinking is, I tried that and didn't work. And I would say there are friendships where you try again and you fight for the friend. And there are times where you go, I'm not losing you. We are going to work this out. And you get a third party, you get somebody there with you and go, we're not leaving until we work it out. We have had to do that with this friendship that we have. But if there are also times that it's just not working anymore and it becomes a toxic relationship and you're fighting for something that's not even good for you. And so it's not marriage, right? I mean, at some point it's like, this is just not working.
Right.
And so there are times and seasons for a friendship to go away. And it doesn't mean forever. Right. And then the next question people have is, well, do I tell them? Like, what do I say?
Yeah. Or do you just slowly ghost them?
I think you'd be direct enough in the beginning to try to work it out that it's kind of clear when it doesn't work out why. So they're not confused. Right. But yeah, there are just times that the friendship isn't working anymore, and that's okay.
Yeah, and the Bible talks so much about that, especially specifically to pruning. And
that's part of the good of it. And that's what I've seen happen as I've let people in and not been afraid is it's made me better. It's made me a stronger person. Bear one another's burdens. In Galatians, it says this, and so fulfill the law of Christ. Like the law of Christ is being fulfilled in you when you're bearing with another person's burden. Like that's the kind of intimacy of you have a problem. I'm not going to listen to your problem. I'm going to get up under your problem with you and bear it. I'm going to carry it with you. And so that is fulfilling the law of Christ. So this idea of intimacy with friendship is all throughout the Bible. It's truly assumed. Like it isn't, it's a whole book about it. Relationships, the whole book. So it doesn't ever assume you're not in community. In fact, most of the times it says you, it means you all in the Greek or Hebrew. So the Bible's written to groups of people. It's written to letters to churches. It's written to the Israelite people in the Old Testament. It's people living together and working things out together.
Yeah. I do love the pruning analogy, and anyone that loves to garden.
Yes.
I have my fiddly fig George.
Good for you.
And he's incredible. And, the more, not that I'm cutting his leaves all the time, I'm not, but when the dead ones drop off and you're caring for him, when I'm caring for him, he's just grown in more magnificent ways when I have pruned him and I've cut back some branches that still have really healthy leaves on them. But when I have cut them back, it just allows the other ones to grow bigger, stronger, better, more beautiful. And it's such a great analogy for our lives and our friendships.
Right.
Because,
well, what we got to remember is people are jerks, but we're also jerks, right?
Yes.
And so when you know that, like, I've probably hurt that person too.
Yeah.
They've hurt me, but I probably needed their grace too. It helped.
Yeah. Hey friends, do you ever notice that when you buy beef or chicken, it costs more and the portions weigh less every time you buy it? Well, we can solve that problem for you with Good Rancher's Price Lock Guarantee. This is the only price lock on 100% American meat you can find, and you don't want to miss it. During their April Price Shield campaign, Good Ranchers is locking in your price until 2026 when you subscribe to any one of their boxes full of meat and seafood that they ship right right to your door. Good Ranchers is where you get 100% USA grown meat that you can trust. It's tender, it's full of flavor every time. With meat prices continuing to go up and the quality at the store going down, Good Ranchers Price Shield can save you hundreds. Plus, you get an extra 10% off your subscription with my code CANDY at goodranchers.com today. What I really love about Good Ranchers, their commitment to transparency. They believe that you have the right to know exactly what's in your food, and you should. They are amazing supporters of this show, so please go support them and take the mystery out of all the meat you buy. This exclusive Price Shield offer ends with the month of April, so if you want to secure your best price on meat until 2026, go to goodranchers.com and use my code CANDY for 10% off your subscription and price lock guarantee until 2026. That's goodranchers.com, American meat delivered.
I mean, I'd be curious, a story for you of like one time you've shared your emotions with people and you were nervous to do it, but it's been so healing. Just helping people feel brave enough to do it, that it's worth it.
When I've shared my emotions,
when you felt like, I don't want to share this, but I will, with a close friend. It doesn't have to be, you don't have to say what it's about.
Yeah. But I'm really open, especially within friendship. Again, I talked about, I am not a person that can sweep it under the rug. So if there is conflict, I need to address it immediately. I have a very hard time going to sleep if I have to sit on it and think about it. But sometimes I do, because if it is a great conflict, I want to be thoughtful about how I approach it and how I call them. I kind of rehearse in my mind what words I want to say to start it. And obviously, the conversation's going to go where it goes, but I want to pray for my tone and my voice. That's the thing I've learned about myself, is that even though my words might be kind, my tone can get harsh. And so I'm constantly watching my tone. And yeah.
Well, I was going to ask, what do you feel about times you've been sad? Like even just going back to what you shared a few weeks ago, which was so powerful, about seasons that you felt like you're in depression. Did you reach out? Was it easy to share with people what was going on?
No.
When did you tell them?
I mean, I just shared that with the whole world, but like really, there's probably only 3 people in my life that I've talked about it in great detail.
So when you told somebody in great detail for the first time, did that help you?
Yes, absolutely.
How so? Because I think people are afraid to bring those things to their friends. The deepest, darkest, hardest things.
Yeah, I mean, the few friends that I told, it was beautiful. Yeah. I mean, when I look back and reflect on it, I'm glad I told them. I'm glad that I opened up a little piece of me that they didn't know about. And they both had great compassion for me and just said, I'm so sorry. I'm here for you. And whatever I can do and however I can love on you. I mean, the offering on the other end was only love. And so I'm grateful, but I feel safe with those people.
Yep.
And sometimes I've had conflict with a few friends and I'm like, hey, let's talk about this. And I've had friends that
don't work out.
They aren't comfortable. They don't really want to talk about it. And that does get challenging. I don't know what the answer is to that, what I want to say, but, friendships that are really important to me, we've managed to work through them in the tough seasons. And there's a good handful that I've just had to let go. Yeah. And the great thing is, I mean, I look back and again, Dylan's been with me almost my whole life, but as a woman in my 40s, I have a very different group of friends today, aside from my best friend, than I did in my 20s and even 30s. We go through seasons of life, and some friendships serve a season of life.
That's right. It's important to say that. And they're wonderful,
and they didn't end on bad terms, but they're not as fruitful anymore. And that's okay. They can kind of be let go, because like you moved from Austin to Dallas, there may be people that you had wonderful relationships with in Austin, but they're no longer the friendship isn't serving each other in a day-to-day. So there's those types of friendships. And where I have really looked to value friendships. I think, again, because I'm getting older, there have been a few people in my life where I've had my close friends say, how are you friends with those people? How
Right?
are you friends with them? I don't get it.
Yeah.
And sometimes, my answer's been different. It's like, there's just something that draws me to wanting to keep up this friendship. Maybe I feel like I can speak Jesus into them more or be an example. And some of them I've looked at and thought, you're right. I don't know why we're still friends. And it's caused me to examine the relationships. And good friends will tell you that.
That's right.
Mine certainly have. And especially, I'll say, being a public person, because you always have people that want to be friends with you because of who you are. And sometimes you have blind spots. I will have blind spots. So when your close friends are like, hey, this doesn't feel good. Tell me about this friend.
Yeah. How that your friends are that way.
My friends are that way.
That's good.
They get protected.
They protect you. That's good.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah. So I feel like I've gotten better over time discerning friendships and finding the value, and then equally pouring back into those friendships. I like what you said about that earlier, is that friendships can serve us really well, but you have to remember that you want to serve that friendship yourself. So if you're always the one sucking and taking from the friendship and not pouring back into it, then it really isn't much of a friendship.
Yeah. Or
vice versa.
Right. The old saying, if you want friends, you've got to be a good friend, is real. And I would just say this, a lot of initiation is required to have good friends. And it gets lonely, and it feels sometimes like, gosh, I'm the only one initiating. And we just don't live in a culture of that. We live in a culture of Netflix and robes and, getting in bed early. And so if you're the one that always is initiating, I just want to encourage you that you're not alone in feeling like that's an exhausting position. And it's good to ask. I remember one of my friends who is so much of a more initiator than me. She said, I need you to call sometimes too. I need you to, she used her words. And I'm a big believer in using your words. Like, say what you're feeling and trust, especially in a trusted relationship where it's not petty and it's not going to blow up on you. Say what you need. And I think that's how things make it over time.
I'm going to ask one more question before we go to our listener question, because I think my audience will appreciate the question, in that I would say most Christians are seeking other Christian friends that are like-minded people within their friendships. And I have a good handful of people say, how can you be friends with so many people that have a totally different worldview than you do? And so I'd love to just talk about that for a minute. I love that
question. Yeah, I don't know where we learned that. I just think that's not the way of Jesus at all.
Exactly.
So I have lots of diverse friendships. And I think I get in trouble, in fact, online a lot just because of my associations with people. I'm like, give me a break. Like that.
Right.
And
exactly.
And I'm proud of that. Like, I'm proud that I am friends with a lot of different people that trust me and love me, and that we're in relationship and share lots of different things, even if we don't believe everything the same. And so I think there's got to be your core. So in Find Your People, there's a little circle graph, and it's like the very inner circle is and this is just from research, you can really reasonably only have 2 to 3 people in that inner circle that you are talking to daily, weekly, keeping up with everything in their life, and they're keeping it up with yours. You really can't have more than that in your most inner circle. And then you have, the next circle, which is going to be friends. They're people that you would take a casserole to I don't really make casseroles, but if you make a casserole, if they got a diagnosis, you would show up on their door. That size is a little bit bigger. And then you've got your acquaintances, and these, are people that their name and their kids' names, and you see them at school or church, and you appreciate them and you keep up with them, but it's going to be a little bit more distant. And so, though within the acquaintances, sometimes that might be all you feel like you have. The people might move in and out of that inner circle, but yet, that helps you define, okay, this is what I'm looking for. I'm looking for these 2 to 3 friends, but typically we think that's enough. And the reality is we really need a really diverse group of people in our lives.
Yeah.
It's more interesting. It's more fun. You learn about how people work. I have so many friends that are single. And I mean, I work with majority women that are single, and they make me better. They are really fun because they can come hang out at a moment's notice. Like, I'm so grateful. If I tried to build a world where it's like everybody looks like me and is like me, I would be missing out on so much. But when it comes to friends that are unbelievers, I mean, I just think that's the gift of life, that you're in a workplace with people that don't know God, and you get to really befriend them, and not just token, but care about them, know their families, know what's going on with them, pray for them, be a great friend. That's why Jesus was so likable. He was a good friend. He cared about people he met. He loved them. He met them where they were. He didn't try to fix them. You know, he met them where they were, and he loved them. And then when it was time, he said, let's talk about business. Let's talk about where you are. But he led with friendship. And I think that's where we've got to get better. We've got to be really good friends.
Yeah. Thank you for that. That was great. Okay, let's take our listener question. And remember, you can submit your questions to Candace.com, and we will answer them in the next season. We try to get to as many as we can. And we have people from age 15 writing in to age 80.
So fun.
And it warms my heart that the age range of people listening to this podcast is such a beautiful thing. So today it's from Haley, and she's 17. Thank you, Haley, for writing in. She says, what's your advice on dating as a teen?
Oh, man.
I'm 17 years old. I haven't really experienced dating yet, but whenever I think about it, I become overwhelmed, and I feel like I'm already behind with no real starting point.
Girl.
I know. I'm like, you're not behind. You're not behind.
But I know what she means, because we both have teenagers, so I know how that feels.
Yeah.
We talk a lot about this in our house right now.
Okay, I'll finish this. She says, I get so focused on the social pressure, and I can't seem to feel excited about dating, and instead I become discouraged. So what helped you feel excited about dating? That's the end question. This is a fun question because we're mamas.
Right. We're living and breathing this right now with our kids. I think I'll make the answer short because I want to hear what you have to say and how y'all handle this in your house. But my kids have had stronger convictions than I ever had.
Mine too.
Really liked kissing boys. I mean, I really liked kissing boys. And back then, for some reason it's so different now, but you'd go on a few dates with a boy, and then you'd go on a few dates with another boy, and sometimes you were dating two at the same time, and it wasn't slutty. It was just dating wasn't so high commitment. Now it feels like you don't ask a girl out until you want to marry her. And that's not the worst thing, but I do think maybe a little balance as adults would be better. But let's talk about the culture of it and the definition of it. I mean, you've got to remember, dating is not in the Bible. Largely, there was arranged marriages back then. So it's not really prescriptive in telling you how to date. It tells you what kind of person to wait for, what kind of person to look for. But we know that, you don't want to give your heart away prematurely. And Solomon talks about that. Do not give your heart away before it's time. So we know you can get really hurt. And we've certainly walked through that. I've walked through that personally. And then I've watched my kids walk through that as well. So I would just say, remember that dating is you trying to find who you want to marry. And are you at a point where you're ready to get married, which 17, probably not. And why not just keep a lot of friends? Why not? That's what my kids did.
That's
largely
exactly what.
And when they didn't,
shared with our kids.
And when they didn't, it ended badly, right? And so it's not like they did that exclusively. There certainly were times, but in general, that was kind of their conviction. And, it's we'll see how it works out. My daughter is really happily married. Yeah. She had the highest convictions for sure. My son has had his heart broken a few times, but, and then I've got two more going out into the world, but it's tricky.
Yeah, it certainly can be. But at 17 years old, I promise you, you're not behind.
You're not behind.
You aren't. And even if it seems like, or it looks like everyone in school is dating, I'm like, trust me, they're not. And we said the same thing to our kids. Like, dating is really a step to find your spouse. And if you're not ready to find your spouse,
why would you do it?
Just have lots of friends. Yeah. Hang out as much as possible. Right. Hang out with boys, hang out with girls, like get to know how to handle and deal with friendships and relationships. Like, that's how you work it out, but you're kind of stronger in numbers. So do it in groups. Like, you don't have to go for coffee or go to a movie or go for dinner and all of that stuff if you're really not interested in marrying that person. I know that maybe outside of the Christian culture, like people might have a very different view of that, because I hear people say like, well, why would anyone want to get married before they're 30? You should date as many people as possible. Don't get me started on what some health ed teacher told my kids like in class. Oh my gosh. Woo. But anyway, I digress. So I would say that take the pressure off yourself, hang out with your friends, and when the right relationship comes along or person that does ask you to go out, I'm like, be open to it. Yeah. And the other thing we've told our kids, and Haley, like maybe if a guy does ask you to go for coffee or to hang out, and you might not be the guy that you're interested in, but use it as practice.
That's right.
And go with him. Say yes. As long as he's not a creeper, but he seems like a nice guy. Yes. Go out with him. We encouraged our kids to do that as well. Like, there's just no harm, no foul. Get to know people and personalities and, it doesn't have to be exclusive. Yeah.
I've watched one of my daughters just build really fun nights in our backyard around the fire and fire pit, and they invite a bunch of guys and girls over, and they just have so much fun. I'm like, that really is the best anyway. And all those guy friends, it's so funny. They are staying her friend. When you have a relationship, it's really hard to stay friends. And if you're in the same group of friends, I've just seen it get really, really messy in high school and even in college when breakups happen, and it makes it hard. So as long as you can, just stay friends. And then,
and I think we can both say that many times it's those friends that you've gotten to know
that you fall in love with later.
That you end up falling in love with later.
That happens.
Well, we hope that helps, Haley. Remember that life can be messy and confusing, but we get to go through these ups and downs together. And Jennie and I made that Unwind Guide just for you. It's a simple resource to help us all become emotionally healthy people. Find the link at Candace.com, and we'll also put it in our show notes. Until next time, be grateful all day, every day. I'm so glad you're here. Life is like a roller coaster, but if today's conversation made you feel just a little better, comment below and tell me how. Candy Rock Entertainment, all rights reserved.